told you that my uncle, my cousin Walter escaped from a Croatian camp. And that's the way they did. I mean, there were people that escaped. Very, very few. You know, I mean, you've heard story about people. I mean, they had, you know, they had guards. I went to Auschwitz a year ago, not this last summer, but the summer before. I took a tour, a European tour, and part of the tour I was going through Germany and Czechoslovakia, and we went into Poland, and part of the tour was of Auschwitz. And especially Birkenau, Auschwitz and Birkenau were right next to each other, and they were actually like one big camp, two big parts of it, and both were huge. Auschwitz, to me, was more like a museum. I didn't have the emotional feeling. I mean, it was horrible to see, you know, all the canes and things that people had thrown in there, and all the children's shoes and all the different exhibits like that, but it was very museum-like, kind of like the museum in Washington, D.C. I mean, it gives you emotional feeling, but it still doesn't seem as real. When you go to Birkenau, you see the barracks with the bunk beds. You see the latrines with just the holes going into this ditch that the people used, you know, which you can imagine how that would have smelled and the whole thing. You see the guards, the stations where the guards were posted. You see the railroad tracks, and it's much more feeling of emotion, and you can realize how nobody could get out of there. And the wire, you know, the electric fencing all the way around. So, and even if you got out, where are you going to go? So even if somebody did escape, their chances of surviving was really not very good. The people that survived the war, we have different speakers. Some were hidden children. They were, one was in Amsterdam, and she lived with 4 different families during the war, that her dad just had her move in with different people. He maybe had to pay them, I don't know, but they pretended that she was their child. She happened to be blonde and blue-eyed, pretty easy to, you know, to not, I mean, you know, there's this kind of stereotype that all Jews are dark-haired, dark-eyed, and, you know, big noses, and really, I mean, everybody looks different. I mean, my dad had sky blue eyes, you know, light blue eyes, and, you know, there's blondes and redheads, and, you know, any other. But it was easier to hide a blonde child than it was a dark-haired child. And so she was hidden during the war. Other people were hidden in fields, or you know, put into. The only way I would have survived if my parents had been able, which isn't very likely, but if I had stayed in Austria, my chances of survival were practically nil. But the only way I would have survived is either if some family would have taken me in and pretended I was their child, or if some orphanages took you in, and sometimes they were able to hide you, change your name, and have you become, in Austria it would have been Catholic orphanages, because the majority of the Austrians were Catholic. And so they did save a lot of people. But otherwise, escape wasn't really much of an option.